So this week, as we mentioned, we got the Big 12 Big East battle. Um, going to break down a couple of those games briefly here for you. So we've got Baylor at UConn. UConn playing in a must win almost, it feels like, right? They just lost 3 in a row last week in Maui. So, I would hate to be a UConn player at practice over the last few days.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's not an ideal way. You go down 3 games in a row, and then you have to come back from Maui. Came back from vacation basically, and I wonder how those obviously. I'd like to see another YouTube video on how those went, but um, I think they
I
bounce back
can
here.
I
I
can
think they're
only
going to be just fine.
imagine. I can only imagine, like, that flight must have been silent. They must have gotten back to practice, and Hurley was just he's been grilling them. I can only imagine. Film must have been brutal, um, but they're going to be ready to go Wednesday.
Yeah, I mean, I think they definitely bounce back and get it done here. We've talked about Baylor and them having a ton of defensive concerns, and there's no I don't think there's a better half court offense or a team that runs better sets in the half court that can really expose this Baylor defense. And Baylor will not be able to play zone here. So I think there's going to be a lot of issues, and UConn's going to come out very intense on the defensive end because they still have good defenders on the perimeter. Like DR and Solomon Ball are good defenders out there, and they can hold their own against that Baylor guard group. So I think UConn's going to be fine, and I think they roll in this game.
Yeah, I agree. I think UConn. Um, I think they probably kind of control this game. I don't know how much they're going to win by, but I think they control it. Um, and I think that this is a game where they just they're going to be ready for. They've watched probably tons of film. They've watched how they can expose Baylor a little bit. I think they're going to be physical with them. They're going to, especially if Baylor comes out in that zone. I could see UConn just coming out and shooting the heck out of it. Like they know they need to play well on Wednesday. Otherwise, their coach might not make it through the weekend. He might have a heart attack.
Yeah, and he was talking about how he's never going to do a 3-game MTE again. Basically just because they lose 3 in a row. So I don't know. I've started to. I don't have hate for the guy, but it's not a good look for him this week. It's been pretty bad. Like they haven't been in this situation in the last few years, and he's not handling it well. I mean, you could handle it a little bit better. Like despite like you could be extremely upset about it, but you don't need to show like truly how upset you are. Like you can keep some of that anger in. So yeah, they definitely need this win, and I think his team's going to come out defensively, especially. They're going to come out ready to go, and I think they're going to be fine.
But the thing too that he needs to realize, like, his expectations need to be lowered a little bit because this is a different team. Like, this is not, as we talked about last episode, this is not the team that they had the last couple of years with that backcourt of Castle and Newton, and then Klingon in the front court, Andre Jackson and Hawkins, and like this is not that team. Sonogo, right? So you just he needs to lower his expectations a little bit, but I think maybe it's pretty hard to do that when you've won 2 in a row, right? He's chasing that three-peat, and like this team realistically like isn't probably that team.
Yeah, I don't think he's ever going to lower his expectations. Like as long as he's coaching college hoops, after you win 2 national championships and you lose all the talent that they lost, like it is hard to lower your expectations. Like obviously you want to go out there and win it again. And the guy, he's a psycho, so he's always going to try to find ways to make this team better, despite how much talent's on the roster. And obviously they're going to right the ship at some point, and they're going to get their name back into like national relevance. Like they're not obviously not a tier 1 contender like we were just talking about with those other teams, but they can find a way, and they can obviously win in the tournament setting with how good their half court offense is and how much experience they have. So like long term, you can't be super concerned, especially with how well they develop players and just how good their program is in general.
Yeah. Now another game, we got Marquette at Iowa State. This should be a fun game, I think. But I think it's kind of a good sell spot if you've been on Marquette. I think it's a good spot to sell them and hop on Iowa State to bounce back with a big win. Um, after their ranked loss to Auburn last week in that tough game in Maui. I expect them to bounce back here at home. Tough place to play. I think Iowa State comes out and handles business, and I could see them kind of not running away with this one, but kind of handling business, winning by 10, 12 points. I think they're gonna bother some of Marquette's guards, and they're gonna force Cam Jones to have to do it all, which he's shown he's capable of. Of course, he's been the best player in the country, other than maybe Janai Broom. But I think that it's gonna be too much for him to have to carry them against this good of a team.
Yeah, I like Iowa State too, and like you don't have to convince me when it comes to selling on Marquette. I've been doing it all year, and I have been wrong all year. So why not do it again? But I think they can even out the turnover battle here, which what makes Marquette's defense so good is like their ability to force turnovers. Any other like area of their defense really isn't that great. They're not good on the glass. They really don't defend the perimeter all that well, despite the numbers so far this year. And I think they match up pretty well. Like they're going to be able to force the ball out of Cam Jones' hands. Like anytime he gets in the pick and roll, they're just going to double. They can switch. They can play at the level. They can do a lot of different things defensively against him. And they're just going to force them to make skip passes, across the perimeter to guys like Stevie Mitchell and Chase Ross, and even David Joplin, who has finally figured it out a little bit shooting wise. But I think they're going to live with a guy like Joplin beating them over Cam Jones, who I think they're very well set up to take away Jones's interior scoring ability, especially, which kind of what breaks down these defenses is his ability to score at the rim, and you kind of have to collapse and then he starts to make plays out of that. So yeah, I think Iowa State's in a pretty good spot to kind of roll here on their home floor.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And then the final game we're going to break down is that Kansas Creighton game. I don't really have much to say about this game. I think Kansas goes to Creighton and really handles business. Creighton's kind of reeling a little bit. Kansas, I think, is going to be hungry to just put this one away early.
Yeah, I mean, especially if Kalkbrenner doesn't play. He was out with a back injury against Notre Dame, so if he doesn't play, I would fade Creighton every single game that Kalkbrenner doesn't play. He's the most important player to his team in the entire country, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And you kind of saw it against Notre Dame, who was able to generate some offense against them. And even if he does play, Dickinson can kind of bring him out to the perimeter and open up some driving lanes against these very iffy perimeter defenders of Creighton. So, yeah, even though they're on the road, I still expect Kansas to go in there and get the job done. And if Kalk doesn't play, I think they win by double digits on the road.
Yeah. Now, overall, believe there are 11 games here. For me, I think the Big 12 wins this 8-3. I looked at the schedule. That's just the feeling I get. There will be some close games, I think, some swing games, if you will. But I think ultimately the Big 12 is just way stronger than the Big East this year, and takes care of business in this challenge.
Yeah, I agree. I had it 7-4. I have St. John's getting the job done. I actually have Providence getting the job done against BYU at home. That's a tough place to play. They have to go across the country to go play at the AMP. So that'll be a tough game. But so I have them stealing one extra game, but ultimately the Big 12 is probably going to roll in this challenge.
Yeah. Now the other challenge, SEC, ACC, that's also this week with games starting on Tuesday. We've got Kentucky at Clemson. this game's interesting, right? Because Clemson's played well, as we talked about in last episode. Shiflin's been awesome, and this is a road test for a Kentucky team that has shown to play well in big games so far, especially with their win over Duke.
Yeah, I mean, Kentucky's been really good this year. Obviously, they were fortunate in the Duke game. Like, I'll kind of die on that hill that they definitely weren't the better team throughout that game. Like Duke shot like 4 for 24 from three, and they had a ton of open ones. So, but I will for playing as well as they've played. They've dominated their bye game competition, but I think people are getting like a false perception of what Kentucky really is. And I don't think it's in a top 10 team. Like I think they sit at 8 right now. I don't think I think they're closer to 20 than they are 8. And I'm pretty high on Clemson as well. I think they can have some success on the interior. Give this Kentucky front line that isn't super physical. You can give them a tough time. And yeah, Kentucky's first road test, true road game. I think Clemson wins this game.
Yeah, I think I could really see this game going either way. I'm going to probably just side with the home team just because Clemson's been really good, and I think they can give some issues to Kentucky. But I could also see Kentucky definitely winning this game. I expect a 5-point game within 5 points. And we'll see kind of where it goes down to the wire. But I'm going to side with the home team. I think Clemson's just playing too well right now.
Yeah, and Kentucky can shoot their way to a win here. Like Clemson plays that shell style defense. So, I mean, obviously Kentucky can shoot their way into a game against anyone. So I wouldn't be surprised if they ended up shooting 40% from three and they won. But I'll side with Clemson because I think they're more physical up front, and it's tough to play your first true road game against a quality team. So I'll side with the Clemson Tigers here.
Yeah. We also have Ole Miss at Louisville. Ole Miss coming off that tough loss. Louisville also coming off the loss in the battle for Atlantis championship. This should be another good one. Louisville being the home team here. Part of me just wants to side with them. I know like Louisville has its issues on the interior. I'm not sure really if Ole Miss is going to create too many issues for them on the interior. But I think Louisville gets this done in a very close game. But I could see this again. I could see this one being one that goes either way. Ole Miss has guards that can really handle pressure and handle that Chucky Hepburn pressure that's been so dominant so far, right? I think he had 13 steals in their last 2 games or something combined. So he's been awesome. So if Ole Miss is able to withstand that pressure of Louisville in the backcourt, I could definitely see them winning this game on the road. But it's not going to be an easy task, right? It's never easy going on the road. It's even tougher going on the road against a team that's going to really pressure you, especially with a guy that's playing as well defensively as Hepburn is.
Yeah, I mean, there's no better team to handle the pressure than Ole Miss. They have the lowest turnover rate in the country right now, and they have a ton of offensive weapons to give this Louisville team some problems that generates a lot of their efficiency on defense by forcing turnovers, and it's led by Hepburn. But Ole Miss is going to have to defend better. They're going to have to defend the dribble drive a little bit better against a Louisville team that's going to play 5 out a lot and, put the ball on the floor, try to get a foot in the paint and kick out for 3. And that can happen a ton in this game. So it's going to just come down to if Louisville can make their open threes, which they really haven't even made them this year. They're sitting at like 28% from 3. I mean, when guys like Noah Waterman are taking a bunch of threes, like Kelsey's letting him take the shots, and he has not looked the part. Shot way better at BYU last year, but his shot just doesn't really look right now. But yeah, if Louisville makes 33 to 35% of their threes in this game, like they should win pretty handily because Ole Miss doesn't have an interior presence to really get in the way of this Louisville team. Like with Case and Pryor up front, he's not super physical. So I'll side with Louisville hitting enough shots to not run away with this game, but get it done at home.
Yeah. Now we also have, as we talked about earlier in the episode, we have Alabama at North Carolina, and North Carolina had, for what North Carolina fans would consider kind of a rocky week at Maui. I think they get back on track here. This is a tough game, I think, for Alabama, especially if Wrightsel's out. I think that North Carolina gets back on track at home. Especially the Amorie hasn't been playing a ton of minutes. I think that bodes well for North Carolina, especially where he's not a guy they're going to play through even when he is in. I think it bodes well for North Carolina because their front court is not very good. So I think it allows them to play smaller more, play with Withers more, and be able to kind of take advantage of that. And I think that Alabama's backcourt defense, as we alluded to earlier, is going to struggle with UNC's guards. And also, I just don't think that Alabama's team as currently constructed with Youngblood out and probably Wrightsell, I don't think they have enough perimeter shooting to keep them in this game. I think UNC is going to be able to kind of pack it in and really focus their efforts on stopping Mark Sears, force Holloway to beat them, file on. But, I think North Carolina takes care of business here.
Yeah, they basically need to have the same strategy as Purdue had against Bama when they packed the paint and didn't really allow Sears to get to the rim. Like that's what Carolina's going to need to do here. And yeah, it's mostly just due to that Bama's banged up right now. So yeah, I like Carolina here. I think those guards are going to give Bama's guards a super tough time. They're going to be able to play in transition a lot. Both teams like to get out and run, and I think that's going to favor Carolina in this matchup. So I'll take Carolina to get back on track at home.
Yeah. Now the final game that we're going to break down, we have Auburn at Duke, which this is awesome that this is the game we get this Wednesday night. Auburn coming off the Maui championship, and obviously Duke coming off that loss in Vegas last week against Kansas in a tight one. This one at Cameron Indoor should be a rocking environment. Auburn going to be coming in undefeated. Really excited for this game. So we'll see what happens in this one. I'm really, really excited for this.
Yeah, I personally Auburn's going to be riding pretty high off that Maui performance, and I think Duke is going to take advantage of them in this game. I think they're just as athletic, at least, as Auburn. No, they're not as physical, but they can come pretty close to matching the physicality up front with Maluach and Malik Brown and guys like Gillis and Sion James being super physical. And obviously Flag is elite. So playing at home in a game that I think Duke's going to feel like they really need this game just because they haven't won like a massive game outside of the Arizona game that doesn't really look as great anymore. So I think they're going to come ready at home. The freshmen are going to look more poised in the late game situation they're probably going to run into here. So overall, I do think Auburn is the slightly better team, but I'm going to take Duke to win at home.
Yeah, I think Duke wins this game as well. It's, Auburn won that tournament last week. Duke coming off a loss in a game that they probably feel like they should have won. Just late game execution. They probably that's a game that they were favored in, that they obviously wish they had won. So they're going to be hungry. Good Auburn team, great Auburn team, one of the best teams in the country coming into their gym, and arguably the most hostile environment in the country. I think Duke takes care of business here. I think they're able to limit Auburn on the offensive glass a little bit with their size, and I think that they'll. My one concern, I guess, is Duke's ability to handle some of the physicality and pressure at guard. I still don't have a ton of trust in Proctor Foster. Auburn's obviously one of the best teams in the country defensively, and so especially as the game is tight. Um, as it gets more down to the wire, Duke's half court offense again, I think, is something to monitor because Auburn's so good defensively, especially in that gym. Cameron Indoor, I feel like it's a 94-foot court, same dimensions, but everything is so much tighter in there. It feels like even just I've never been there, but being watching it on TV, it looks a lot tighter than it really is.
Yeah, it's a really weird dynamic there. It does create for one of the best advantages in the country. But yeah, the guards of Duke are going to have to play better than they have, especially Foster, who just hasn't looked. He's gotten worse from last year, from what it seems like. Unless
It's frustrating.
like I manipulated my brain into thinking he was going to make a year two leap this year, and I was there were some positives with him last year, but there hasn't really been a lot there with him. But this is the best matchup that you could have for Auburn with the front court. So, and I think it provides at least some resistance to Jani Broom because, I mean, Houston and Iowa State couldn't provide that resistance. So maybe Duke can't do it, but I think they can. I think they have the defensive talent to be able to slow him down a bit more.
Yeah. So for me, I think, when it's all said and done, I think the SEC ends up winning this. Although I think the SEC, in order to win this SEC ACC battle, is going to have to win some road games. Some of the swing games, the SEC has some road tests, which are never easy, even if they maybe are the better team. So they're going to have to win some road games, I think, if they're going to win this thing. But ultimately, I think they do enough to win 9-7, 10-6. But we'll see. There's some games out there that I think could end up swinging the other way, just because the team is at their home court.
Yeah, I like the SEC. I like them 10-6.
Yeah.
Yeah, not much more to add on to that. I mean, the ACC's down, and I don't like. There's some home games here, like the games we talked about. We like 3 ACC home teams here, or even all 4. All the games we talked about, but that could easily go 50-50 as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was maybe even more than 10-6. But it's going to be more interesting than the Big 12 and Big East, that's for sure. So it'll be fun to watch. But I have obviously the SEC; they might be the best conference in the entire country. So I'm not going to take them to lose to the ACC.
Yeah. So with that, this week we have Big Ten play starting up, Mountain West play starting up, which we'll dive into a little bit more as the week goes on. Obviously covered a lot of content here in this episode, but it's a big week of college basketball. These 2 Big East, Big 12, and SEC, ACC challenges are 2 fun challenges on the heels of Feast Week. So congrats to Oklahoma and Oregon and Auburn for all winning last week in their Feast Week tournaments. But now, we have this challenge this week, and then those conferences are in the conference play as well. So, a lot of exciting basketball on the horizon.